I stared at the termination letter, my hands shaking. $14. They fired me over a $14 coffee on my expense report. It's grounds for termination, Brenda from HR said, her smile tight and rehearsed. 5 years building their entire software infrastructure. 5 years of late nights and weekends. Gone because I bought coffee during a client meeting. But they didn't know something. I built every system they had, and I had access to everything. Every transaction, every lie, every crime. They picked the wrong software engineer. The rain hit my face as I walked out of Tech Venture Solutions headquarters in downtown Seattle. Each step felt surreal, like I was moving through someone else's nightmare. In my arms, a small cardboard box held the contents of my desk. 5 years reduced to a coffee mug, a couple of framed certificates, and a succulent plant that was probably going to die because I could never remember to water it. I was 32 years old, single. This job had been my entire identity since I joined fresh out of a coding boot camp, determined to prove that self-taught engineers could compete with computer science graduates from Stanford and MIT. I had worked twice as hard as anyone else, staying until midnight, coming in on Saturdays, skipping Christmas with my family in Spokane because we had a product launch in January. And I had built everything, not helped build, not contributed to. Built, from scratch, alone. The customer relationship management system that tracked every client interaction, every sale, every support ticket. That was mine. I wrote every line of code, designed every database table, optimized every query. The financial tracking software that processed expense reports, invoices, and payments. Mine. The internal communications platform that replaced email and made collaboration seamless. Also, mine. I was the only senior engineer at TechVenture who understood the complete architecture of all our systems, how they connected, where the data flowed, what made everything work. CEO Marcus Thornton had recruited me personally 5 years ago. I remembered that meeting at a coffee shop in Capitol Hill. He was charismatic, energetic, full of vision about disrupting the enterprise software market. He promised me equity, said I would be a founding team member, told me we were building something special together. The equity never materialized. There was always a reason. The paperwork wasn't ready. The board needed to approve the option pool. We were waiting until after the next funding round. 5 years of excuses. I had never complained about the 60-hour weeks. Never pushed back when Marcus asked me to cancel vacation plans because we had a deadline. Never said no when he needed something done over the weekend. I believed in the mission. I believed in the team. I believed I was building something that mattered. The $14 incident made no sense. Last Tuesday, I submitted my monthly expense report like I did every month. One line item caught my attention now as I walked through the rain toward the bus stop, coffee meeting with a client from Portland at a local cafe. Total cost, $14.37. I had submitted hundreds of expense reports over 5 years. Coffee with clients, lunches with prospects, Uber rides to meetings across town. Never once had there been an issue. But this time, Friday morning, Brenda from HR called me into the conference room. Marcus was already there, sitting at the head of the table with his arms crossed. His expression was stone cold. Nothing like the friendly mentor who used to ask about my weekend plans. Brenda slid a printed expense report across the table. My coffee was highlighted in yellow. "This violates company policy," she said. "It shows a pattern of financial irresponsibility." I was confused. What pattern? What policy? I bought coffee with a client. That was normal business practice. Every company I knew reimbursed for client meetings. Marcus didn't say much. He just watched me with those cold eyes while Brenda explained that my employment was terminated, effective immediately. The papers were already prepared. Legal documents with my name spelled correctly. My employee ID number printed in the corner. Today's date at the top. They had planned this before I walked into the room. Security escorted me back to my desk. I had 20 minutes to pack my things. Colleagues I had worked with for years avoided eye contact. Tyler, the junior developer I had trained and mentored for 2 years, looked like he wanted to say something but didn't. I wanted to say goodbye properly, to hand off my projects with documentation, to make sure nothing broke after I left. But the security guard stood there with his hand near his radio, making it clear my time was up. Now I stood at the bus stop, soaked through, holding a box of useless office supplies. The number 12 bus pulled up and I climbed on, found a seat in the back, and watched the city blur past the rain-streaked windows. My studio apartment was in Fremont, a neighborhood I could barely afford even with my software engineer salary. Seattle rent was crushing, and I had student loans from community college, credit card debt from when my car broke down last year, and now no job and no prospects. I got home, unlocked the door, dropped the box on the floor, and collapsed on my couch. My laptop sat on the coffee table where I had left it that morning, back when I still had a job, back when my life made sense. Out of habit, muscle memory from 5 years of working remotely on weekends, I opened it and pulled up the VPN connection to Tech Ventures servers. The login screen appeared. I entered my credentials, expected an error message, expected my access to be revoked. But the connection established. I was in. They had forgotten to revoke my system access. In their rush to fire me, to get me out of the building before I could cause trouble, they had skipped the IT security protocols. I had root access to everything. Every server, every database, every file system, every application. I knew I should log off. The ethical thing, the legal thing, was to close my laptop and walk away. But something felt deeply wrong about this entire situation. Why fire me over $14? Why have the paperwork ready before the meeting? Why refuse to let me hand off my projects? I navigated to the expense report system, pulled up my submission from last Tuesday, scrolled through the approval workflow, and there it was. The coffee expense had been approved 2 weeks ago by my direct manager, automatically processed, reimbursement scheduled, standard procedure. But then, yesterday, Thursday afternoon, someone had manually overridden the approval, changed the status to rejected, added a note about policy violation. The override was logged with a user ID. I checked the employee database. The user ID belonged to Marcus Thornton himself. The CEO had personally gone into the expense system and flagged my coffee as a violation, then fired me the next morning with papers that must have been prepared earlier in the week. This wasn't about the coffee at all. This was planned, deliberate, calculated. But why? What had I done to make Marcus want me gone so badly that he would manufacture a reason to fire me? I sat there staring at my laptop screen as the rain continued outside my window, and I realized I was about to find out exactly what Marcus Thornton was hiding. Saturday morning, sunlight filtered through my apartment windows, but I had not slept. I had been logged into Tech Ventures systems for 12 hours straight, and what I found made my stomach turn. I started by looking at other expense reports, thinking maybe there was something I missed, some pattern that would explain why mine was singled out. Marcus submitted expense reports every week, dinners at high-end restaurants, hotels in San Francisco and New York, flights to conferences. The amounts seemed reasonable at first glance. $150 for dinner with investors, $300 for a hotel, $600 for a cross-country flight. But I built this system. I knew it inside and out. I knew how to query the database directly, bypassing the user interface, accessing raw data that most people never saw. I wrote a custom script in Python, something that took me 20 minutes because I had written similar analysis tools a dozen times before. The script pulled every expense Marcus had submitted in the past 3 years and cross-referenced the vendors with public business registries. The results made me physically ill. Over $300,000 in fake expenses. Receipts that were doctored, vendors that did not exist, hotels that had no record of Marcus ever staying there. I called one, pretending to be confirming a reservation. The front desk manager told me they had never heard of Marcus Thornton, and their computer showed no bookings under that name for the past year. Flights to conferences that were never scheduled. I checked conference websites. The events Marcus claimed to attend had been canceled or never existed. I moved deeper into the financial systems. The accounting software I had also built from the ground up. Wire transfers caught my attention. $50,000 to a company called Summit Consulting Group. $75,000 to Pacific Northwest Analytics. Another $60,000 to Cascade Business Solutions. The names sounded legitimate, professional, boring. Exactly the kind of vendors a tech company might hire. I looked up the business registrations. Summit Consulting Group was registered to an address in Bellevue. I pulled up Google Street View. The address was a UPS store. Pacific Northwest Analytics listed an address in Tacoma. Another mailbox service, Cascade Business Solutions, same story. These were shell companies, fake businesses that existed only on paper, set up to receive money that then disappeared into offshore accounts. I spent hours following the money trail. Export transactions to spreadsheets. Build network graphs showing where money went. The total over the past 18 months was staggering. $2.4 million had been moved through fake vendors into accounts I could not trace beyond a certain point. But the pattern was clear. Marcus was embezzling from his own company. TechVenture had secured Series B funding last year. $15 million from venture capital firms that believed in Marcus' vision, that trusted their money was going toward product development, hiring talent, expanding the business. Instead, Marcus was stealing it, funneling it into his own pockets while employees like me worked ourselves to exhaustion for salaries that barely covered Seattle rent. I remembered the equity he promised me, stock options that never materialized. I remembered other engineers asking about equity, being told the same thing, not ready yet. Soon, after the next milestone. Now I understood. Marcus was diluting shares, creating complex cap tables that hid his theft, making sure none of us ever saw the real financial picture. My 5 years of sacrifice, of 60-hour weeks and canceled vacations and missed family dinners, had made Marcus Thornton rich while I struggled to pay my student loans. But there was more. I found a folder on the server labeled Legal Holds. Inside were email chains I had never seen before, conversations I was never included in. 3 months ago, the company accountant, a woman named Dorothy who sat on the second floor and always said good morning when we passed in the kitchen, had started asking questions. Her emails to Marcus were professional, careful, but pointed. She had noticed discrepancies in the financial reports, transactions that did not match invoices, vendors with no contracts on file. She asked Marcus for clarification, for documentation, for explanations. Marcus' responses were defensive. He told Dorothy she was overstepping her role, said she should focus on her assigned tasks and let him handle strategic financial decisions. But Dorothy persisted. She was good at her job, thorough, detail-oriented. She prepared a report documenting the irregularities and submitted it to the board of directors, specifically to Patricia Holbrook, the board chair and a prominent investor. 2 weeks later, Dorothy was fired. The official reason was performance issues. I remembered when it happened. There was a brief company-wide email saying Dorothy had decided to pursue other opportunities, and we wished her well. No goodbye party. No farewell lunch. She was just gone one day, and we all moved on because that was what you did in corporate America. You did not ask questions. You kept your head down and did your work. I sat back from my laptop, my eyes burning from staring at the screen all night. I understood now. 2 weeks ago, I had mentioned to Marcus in passing that I was updating the financial system. Routine maintenance, optimizing some database queries, cleaning up old data. I told him I had noticed some weird transaction patterns that did not match expected formats. I thought nothing of it, Just standard software engineering, fixing inconsistencies, making the system more efficient. Marcus must have panicked. He knew what Dorothy had found 3 months earlier. He knew the board had dismissed her concerns and fired her to make the problem go away. But now, here was another person, someone with even deeper access to the systems, someone who built the entire infrastructure and could trace every transaction back to its source, someone who could prove what Dorothy had only suspected. He needed me gone before I found what Dorothy found, before I asked the wrong questions, before I looked too closely at those transaction patterns. The $14 coffee was just an excuse, a manufactured violation to justify immediate termination. He probably went through my expense reports, looking for anything he could twist into a policy breach, found the coffee, decided that would work, prepared the termination papers, had HR schedule the meeting, got me out of the building before I could dig any deeper. But he made a mistake. He forgot that I built these systems. He forgot that I had access to everything. He forgot that firing someone does not erase what they know or what they can find. Marcus Thornton had picked the wrong engineer to betray. Sunday evening arrived with the kind of exhaustion that comes from 48 hours without real sleep. My apartment was dark except for the glow of my laptop screen. I had spent the entire weekend documenting everything. Screenshots of expense reports, database exports showing fake vendors, email chains proving Marcus ordered the destruction of evidence, wire transfer records with account numbers and dates. I organized it all into folders, created a timeline, wrote explanatory notes so anyone reading the evidence would understand what they were looking at. Then I backed it up, encrypted everything with military-grade encryption, and uploaded copies to 3 separate cloud services: Google Drive, Dropbox, and a secure server I rented specifically for this purpose. I burned the data to a physical hard drive, one of those rugged external drives designed to survive drops and water damage. I called my friend Amy, someone I had known since community college who now worked in public relations across town. "I need you to hold on to something for me," I told her when we met at a coffee shop in Ballard. I handed her the hard drive. "If anything happens to me, if I disappear or get arrested or end up in an accident, send this to the FBI." Amy looked at me like I had lost my mind. "Jade, what are you involved in? Corporate fraud, embezzlement, millions of dollars. Just promise me you'll keep this safe." She promised, though I could tell she thought I was being paranoid. Maybe I was. But the more I uncovered about Marcus, the more I realized he had too much to lose to let someone expose him quietly. Monday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls on my phone, all from numbers I did not recognize. My voicemail was full. I listened to the first one. A smooth male voice identified himself as an attorney from Hutchinson and Price, LLC, a law firm representing Tech Venture Solutions. They were suing me for breach of contract, theft of proprietary information, and unauthorized access to computer systems. A cease and desist letter was being delivered to my address by courier. They claimed I had accessed company systems without authorization after my termination and stolen confidential data. The lawsuit sought $500,000 in damages. My hands were shaking again, just like they had been on Friday when Brenda handed me the termination letter. $500,000. I did not have $500 in my checking account. I had $4,000 in savings that I had been hoarding for emergencies. And I guess this qualified, but it would not even cover the retainer for a decent attorney. The lawsuit was designed to destroy me financially and discredit me publicly. If I was just a disgruntled former employee hacking into company systems out of revenge, nothing I said about Marcus would be credible. The doorbell rang. A courier handed me a thick envelope. Inside were legal documents, pages of dense text that I skimmed with growing dread. Breach of contract, unauthorized computer access, corporate espionage, and then, tucked between the legal pages, a handwritten note on plain paper with no signature. "You were always smart, Jade, but you're out of your depth. Delete everything. Walk away. Or this gets much worse. The threat was clear. Marcus knew I had accessed the systems. He knew I had found evidence. And he was making sure I understood the consequences of trying to expose him. I decided to go over his head. If Marcus was corrupt, maybe the board of directors did not know. Maybe Patricia Holbrook, the board chair who was supposed to oversee company ethics and financial integrity, would want to know that her CEO was stealing millions. I found her contact information through LinkedIn and sent an encrypted email with a sample of the evidence, just enough to show I was serious. Bank transactions showing money going to fake vendors. Email chains showing Marcus ordering Dorothy to ignore discrepancies. The subject line read, "Urgent, CEO financial fraud." Hours passed. I refreshed my inbox obsessively, waiting for a response. Finally, that evening, Patricia replied. Her email was professional, measured, corporate. She thanked me for bringing this to her attention. Said the board took all allegations seriously, promised they would investigate. But then the tone shifted. However, we have reviewed your employment file, and your termination was justified based on policy violations. Your unauthorized access to company systems after termination is a serious matter and potentially criminal in nature. We strongly advise you to retain legal counsel. The matter you have raised will be handled internally through appropriate channels. I read the email 3 times, each time feeling sicker. Patricia was protecting Marcus. Either she was complicit, or willfully blind, or somehow benefiting from his fraud. The board was not going to help. No one inside the company would help. The system was rigged to protect people like Marcus, while people like me got crushed. Going to the authorities seemed like the next logical step, but the lawsuit complicated everything. If I went to the FBI, Marcus' lawyers would paint me as a vindictive hacker trying to destroy her former employer. My evidence, no matter how solid, would be tainted by the narrative that I was breaking the law to get it. That night, my apartment building's fire alarm went off at 3 a.m. Loud, piercing, impossible to ignore. I grabbed my phone and keys and stumbled down 4 flights of stairs with my neighbors, all of us standing on the sidewalk in pajamas while fire trucks arrived. The firefighters searched the building for 20 minutes and found nothing. False alarm. Faulty sensor, they said. These things happen in old buildings. We were allowed back inside. I climbed the stairs, exhausted and jittery from adrenaline, and unlocked my apartment door. Something felt wrong. The air was different, disturbed. I checked my laptop first. Someone had tried to access it. The login screen showed 3 failed password attempts. I checked the closet where I kept my backup hard drives hidden in a box of winter clothes. They were gone. Someone had broken into my apartment during the fire alarm chaos. Someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Cause a false alarm, wait for everyone to evacuate, break in while the building was empty, grab the evidence, get out. I called Amy immediately. Is the drive still safe? Yeah, it's in my apartment. Why? Don't let it out of your sight. Someone just robbed me. Only Amy's copy remained. Everything else was in cloud storage, but physical drives felt more real, more secure. Now I had nothing but digital files that could potentially be hacked or deleted if Marcus had the right resources. I sat on my couch in the dark, too afraid to sleep, and realized I was in serious danger. This was not just about a lawsuit or a threat. Someone had broken into my home. Someone was willing to commit crimes to stop me from exposing Marcus. And I was alone, unemployed, facing a $500,000 lawsuit, with no one to turn to and nowhere safe to go. Tuesday morning, I packed a bag and went to Amy's apartment. I could not stay in my own place, could not shake the feeling that someone was watching, waiting. Amy lived in a small 1-bedroom in Queen Anne and let me crash on her couch without asking too many questions. She could see how terrified I was, lying there in the dark, Unable to sleep for the third night in a row, I thought about my former colleagues at Tech Venture. Most had been friendly but not close. We grabbed lunch sometimes, complained about deadlines, celebrated product launches with beer at the office. But no one I would call a real friend except maybe Tyler Brennan, the junior developer I had mentored. Tyler was 25 years old, fresh out of college when I hired him 2 years ago. He was idealistic, believed in technology's power to change the world, reminded me of myself when I first joined Tech Venture. I had trained him personally, taught him clean coding practices, how to debug complex systems, how to think like an engineer. Last week, the Wednesday before I got fired, Tyler had sent me a private Slack message. "Something weird is happening with the servers. Can we talk?" I had planned to meet with him Friday morning, but I got fired Friday morning instead, escorted out before I could respond to his message. Now, 3 days later, I wondered what Tyler had noticed. What weird things were happening with the servers? Whether it connected to Marcus fraud. I sent Tyler an email to his personal address, not his work account. Asked if he wanted to meet. He responded within minutes. Said yes, suggested the public library downtown, neutral ground. We met that afternoon at a study table in the back corner where no one would overhear us. Tyler looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, hair uncombed, wearing the same hoodie I had seen him wear 3 days in a row before. "I'm glad you reached out," he said. "Things have been crazy since you left. What happened?" "Marcus told the entire engineering team that you were let go for security violations, said you had been accessing confidential client data inappropriately, said it was a serious breach and we all needed to be more careful about information security." Tyler paused. I did not believe it. "I know you. You would never do that." His loyalty meant more than I expected. It was not about security violations. They fired me over a $14 coffee expense, but I think the real reason is that I was getting too close to something they wanted to hide. I told Tyler everything. The fake expense reports, the shell companies, the embezzlement, Dorothy's story, the lawsuit against me, the break-in at my apartment. Tyler listened without interrupting, his expression shifting from disbelief to anger to determination. "I noticed strange things too," he said. "Code changes appearing in the repositories that I did not make. Financial reports being manually edited instead of generated automatically from the database. My system access is being monitored more heavily now. I get notifications every time I log into certain servers, and the atmosphere in the office feels different. People are scared. Scared of what? Getting fired. 3 more people have been let go in the past week. All suddenly, all for minor reasons that do not make sense. Sarah from QA because she missed a deadline by 1 day. Mike from DevOps because he questioned a server configuration change. Jennifer from Product Management because she pushed back on a feature request. All of them worked closely with financial systems or had access to sensitive data. I felt cold. Marcus was cleaning house, removing anyone who might notice what he was doing, eliminating potential witnesses before they could ask questions. The company was hemorrhaging talent, and the remaining employees were terrified they would be next. Tyler leaned forward. "There's something else." Dorothy contacted me. The accountant. "Yeah. She saw my LinkedIn post about missing great colleagues. It was subtle, just saying I valued the people I worked with. But Dorothy must have been monitoring Tech Venture employees online. She sent me a private message. Said if I wanted to know why people were really being fired, she had information." My pulse quickened. "Do you have her contact information?" Tyler pulled out his phone and showed me Dorothy's message. I copied down her email address. If Dorothy had evidence from the accounting side, and I had evidence from the technical side, maybe together we could build an irrefutable case. We arranged a meeting for the next day. Another coffee shop, this time in Fremont. close to my old apartment. Dorothy arrived 10 minutes late, looking nervous. She was 58 years old with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, wearing a cardigan despite the warm spring weather. She had been an accountant for 30 years, worked at Tech Venture for 7, and her hands shook as she held her coffee cup. "I should not be doing this," she said immediately. "I signed an NDA. They could sue me." "They are already suing me," I replied, "for $500,000. What do I have to lose?" Dorothy studied my face, then nodded. "Marcus destroyed my career. I did everything right. I found the fraud, documented it, reported it through proper channels. I went to the board like I was supposed to. And they fired me. Told me I was overstepping, that my performance was not meeting standards. After 7 years of excellent reviews, suddenly I was incompetent." She pulled a folder from her bag, stuffed with printed documents, bank statements, invoice copies, spreadsheets with highlighted discrepancies. "I kept copies of everything. Violation of my NDA, but I did not care anymore. I hired a lawyer with my savings, tried to fight them. But Tech Venture has an expensive legal team from a big firm downtown. My lawyer was solo practitioner working out of a shared office space. We could not compete." "What happened?" Tyler asked. "They buried me in motions and depositions and discovery requests. Every court filing cost money I did not have. After 6 months, I was broke, drained my retirement savings paying legal bills. They offered a settlement, $20,000 if I dropped the case and signed a statement saying I had made false accusations because I was bitter about being fired. I took the money. I had no choice. I have grandchildren. I needed to survive. Dorothy's story was my future. Marcus would drag the lawsuit out, force me to spend money I did not have defending myself, then offer a pittance to make me go away and discredit everything I said, unless I found another way. "Can I see your evidence?" I asked. We spent the next 2 hours comparing what we had. Dorothy's evidence covered the accounting side, fraudulent invoices from fake vendors, money trails through shell corporations, tax documents that did not match reported revenue. My evidence covered the technical side. Server logs showing Marcus deleting files and emails, database transactions proving he personally authorized transfers to companies that did not exist, digital fingerprints that could not be faked or explained away. Together, we had a complete picture, not just suspicions or anomalies, but proof, documentation that would hold up in court, that showed systematic fraud over multiple years, that tied everything directly to Marcus Thornton. "I tried the legal route," Dorothy said. "It does not work when they have money and you are just one person trying to fight a corporation." "So, what do we do?" I asked. Dorothy smiled grimly. "We go public. Media. We make it too big for them to hide." Tyler offered to help gather more real-time evidence from inside the company. He would be risking his job, maybe facing the same lawsuit I was facing, but he said it was the right thing to do. Amy, when I told her that night back at her apartment, said she could help with media contacts. She worked in PR and knew journalists at local papers and news stations. We had 4 people now, real evidence, a plan, and for the first time since Friday when I got fired, I felt something other than fear and despair. I felt hope. Wednesday arrived with momentum. Our small team met at the library again to organize everything. Dorothy and I spent hours creating a clear narrative from the mass of documents and data, a timeline showing when the fraud started, how it escalated, what Marcus did to cover his tracks, dollar amounts with supporting documentation, bank account numbers and wire transfer receipts, email chains and server logs, witness statements from Tyler about the current atmosphere of fear at Tech Venture and from Dorothy about what happened when she tried to report the fraud internally. Amy drafted a press release and prepared a media strategy. We were targeting Jonathan Hayes, an investigative reporter at the Seattle Times known for covering tech industry scandals. Amy had worked with him on a previous story and said he was thorough, fair, and not afraid to take on powerful people. The plan was to deliver everything Friday morning, give Jonathan the evidence, let him verify it independently, then publish a story that would force regulators and law enforcement to take action. Tyler's role was the most dangerous. He still worked at Tech Venture, going into the office every day, pretending everything was normal while secretly downloading server logs and financial reports. Wednesday afternoon, he was at his desk, pulling the latest data, when a security alert flashed on his screen. Paul, the system administrator, appeared behind him. "Marcus wants to see you. Now." Tyler deleted his browser history as fast as he could and followed Paul upstairs to the executive floor. He sent me a quick text from the elevator. "Been called to Marcus' office. Will update soon." I did not hear from him for 2 hours. When my phone finally rang, Tyler's voice was shaking. "They know. They fired me." "What happened?" "Marcus, Brenda from HR, and some lawyer I have never seen before. They had printouts of my system access logs, every database query I ran, every file I downloaded. They record everything, apparently. Marcus asked who I was working with. If it was you, I denied everything. Said I was doing routine maintenance. He did not believe me. They fired me on the spot. Security escorted me out. They took my laptop, my phone, access, everything." "Did they threaten you?" "Worse. They said they are filing criminal charges for corporate espionage. Said I stole proprietary information, that I accessed systems I was not authorized to use. The same playbook they used on me. Criminalize the whistleblower to discredit their evidence. Make it about unauthorized access instead of what the access revealed." "I am sorry," I told Tyler. "This is my fault. I should not have asked you to help." "No." His voice was firmer now. "This is not your fault. This is Marcus' fault, and I would do it again." But the situation was deteriorating. They had confiscated Tyler's laptop with fresh evidence he had gathered. They had his personal contact information, knew where he lived. The pressure was increasing. That evening, my phone rang. Dorothy. She was crying, barely coherent. "They found me. They know about the evidence. What happened? Are you okay?" 2 men came to my house. Said they were from a law firm. They had papers, legal documents. Said if I did not turn over all my files and sign an affidavit saying I lied about Marcus, they would prosecute me for violating my NDA, for theft, for fraud. Said I would go to prison. Dorothy's voice broke. "I am 58 years old, Jade. I cannot go to prison. I have grandchildren. What did you do?" Silence. Then, quietly, I gave them everything. All my files, all my backups, and I signed their paper. I said I made false accusations because I was angry about being fired. The words hit like a physical blow. "Dorothy, no. I am so sorry. I am so sorry." But they said they would destroy me. They would take my house, my pension, everything. I could not fight them. Not again. I already lost once. She was sobbing now. I tried to comfort her, told her I understood, but inside I was panicking. Dorothy's evidence was gone. Her testimony was now legally bound to say I was lying. Tyler was fired and threatened. Amy was getting scared, asking if maybe we should stop before someone got seriously hurt. We were losing. Friday morning, the day we were supposed to go to the press, I woke instead to a news alert on my phone. Tech Venture Solutions announces successful Series C funding round, $30 million from prominent Silicon Valley investors. Marcus Thornton giving interviews on local news, calling him a visionary CEO. The company now valued at $150 million. I watched the video on my phone screen. Marcus in his expensive suit, standing in Tech Venture's lobby with the company logo behind him, smiling for the cameras. The reporter asked about recent company changes. We have had to make some tough personnel decisions, Marcus said smoothly, letting go team members who did not align with our values of integrity and transparency. But we are focused on the future, on building something great, on delivering value to our customers and shareholders. Subtle reference to me, to Tyler, to Dorothy, painting us as problematic employees who were removed for good reasons. Meanwhile, he stood there lying to reporters, to investors, to everyone, with my 5 years of work powering the systems that made his company valuable. I sat in Amy's living room, watching Marcus on the news, and felt utterly defeated. 5 years of my life had built his empire. He was stealing millions of dollars, and no one cared. The lawsuit was destroying me financially. Dorothy had been forced to recant. Tyler had been fired. Marcus was winning. My phone buzzed with a new email. Unknown sender. Subject line: You are not alone. I opened it carefully, expecting another threat or legal notice. Instead, I found a message that changed everything. I worked at Tech Venture. I know what Marcus did. I have evidence too, and I know others. We have been waiting for someone brave enough to stand up. Are you ready to finish this? The email was signed, "A friend in IT." I stared at those words. We have been waiting. We know others. I was not alone. There were more victims, more people Marcus had betrayed and threatened and pushed out, more people with evidence, more people waiting for their chance to fight back. I typed a response. Tell me everything. The mysterious contact led to a meeting at the same library where everything had started. Friday afternoon, I sat at a study table in the back corner, and a man in his 40s approached. Graying hair, tired eyes, carrying a worn backpack. "I am Scott Fisher," he said, sitting down across from me. "I worked at Tech Venture for 3 years as IT director. Left 6 months ago." What happened? Scott's story was familiar and horrifying. He had discovered Marcus' fraud over a year ago while performing routine server maintenance, found deleted emails in backup archives, saw wire transfers that did not match any approved vendors. When he asked Marcus about it, Marcus told him to mind his own business and focus on keeping the systems running. When Scott persisted, Marcus fired him, threatened him with lawsuits if he said anything to anyone. "I left quietly," Scott said. "Thought about going public, but I was afraid. I have a wife and 2 kids. Could not risk everything on a fight I might lose. But I kept everything. Full server backups from before Marcus could delete them. Complete email archives going back 3 years. Records of Marcus personally ordering me to destroy evidence, which I pretended to do but actually preserved. Why contact me now? Because I saw the lawsuit Marcus filed against you. Saw your name in the legal notices. I knew you built most of our systems. If anyone could prove what he was doing, it would be you. And I realized I was not the only one. There are others." Scott pulled out a piece of paper with 5 names written on it. Former Tech Venture employees, all fired under suspicious circumstances over the past 2 years. All had signed NDAs and severance agreements. All were afraid to speak out alone. But Scott had been in contact with them, quietly comparing notes, waiting for the right moment. "We cannot be silenced if we all speak at once," Scott said. This was bigger than I realized. Not just 1 or 2 disgruntled employees, but a pattern of abuse spanning years. Marcus had been systematically firing anyone who got close to his fraud, paying them off, threatening them, isolating them so they could not organize or fight back. But he had underestimated how angry people become when they are treated as disposable, how much they remember, how long they wait for justice. "I have a contact at the FBI," Scott continued. "Agent named Sarah Palmer, white-collar crime division. She investigated a similar case last year, tech CEO embezzling from venture capital funding. She is good at her job, and she actually cares about prosecuting financial fraud. Media is good, I said. But criminal charges are better, Scott nodded. But we need an airtight case. The FBI will not move on accusations. They need proof, documentation, evidence that will hold up in federal court. Over the next 3 days, we worked around the clock. Me, Scott. Tyler, who joined back in despite being fired. Amy, who was committed now despite her fear, and 2 other former employees that Scott brought in. We compiled everything. Server logs proving Marcus deleted evidence. Email chains showing him ordering subordinates to hide transactions. Wire transfer records showing money flowing to Marcus' personal accounts through shell companies. Fake invoices and vendor contracts. Tax documents that did not match filed returns. Dorothy's original accounting reports that Scott had saved copies of before they were destroyed. Most importantly, I accessed something I had built into the financial system years ago, an audit log that automatically recorded every transaction with a timestamp, user ID, and IP address. The system used blockchain-style encryption, making it theoretically unchangeable. Marcus did not understand the technical details. He thought deleting emails and files would cover his tracks. But the audit log captured everything. Every fraudulent wire transfer was logged with Marcus' user account. Every fake invoice he approved. Every shell company payment he authorized. Dates, times, amounts, account numbers, everything. Digital fingerprints that could not be faked or explained away. This was the smoking gun. Friday afternoon, we went to the FBI. The federal building in downtown Seattle felt imposing, all concrete and glass and security checkpoints. Agent Sarah Palmer met us in a windowless conference room on the 4th floor. She was in her late 30s, sharp-eyed, skeptical. "Another disgruntled employee story," she said, not unkindly. "I hear a lot of these. Usually, they do not go anywhere." But as we presented the evidence, her demeanor changed. She started asking detailed questions. Called in her supervisor. They reviewed documents for 3 hours, checking dates, verifying account numbers, cross-referencing our timeline against their own databases of shell companies and offshore accounts. Finally, Agent Palmer leaned back in her chair. "This is enough for a warrant. We will move on this Monday morning." Relief flooded through me. Federal agents, criminal charges, real consequences for Marcus, justice. But Saturday morning, everything accelerated. Tyler called me in a panic. "Something is happening at Tech Venture. I am still on the company's Slack channel. Everyone is freaking out. What is going on? Marcus just sent a company-wide email. He is shutting down the Seattle office, moving all operations to Singapore. Effective immediately. 50 people laid off this morning." My stomach dropped. Marcus knew something was coming. Maybe he had contacts who warned him, or maybe he just sensed the walls closing in. He was trying to move assets offshore, destroy evidence, flee to a country without extradition treaties to the United States. I called Agent Palmer immediately. "He is running. You need to move now. We cannot get a warrant until Monday. Federal judges do not work weekends. By Monday he will be gone with the money." Agent Palmer paused. I could hear her thinking, weighing options. "I can get an emergency warrant if you can prove imminent flight risk. Something concrete. A plane ticket, wire transfers scheduled for Monday, evidence that he is about to leave the country. Give me 2 hours." I logged back into Tech Venture's systems. My access still worked because Marcus, in his arrogance or his oversight, still had not revoked it. I navigated to the email server, to Marcus' personal account, found what I needed in his sent folder, a one-way plane ticket to Singapore, departing Sunday night, business class on Singapore Airlines, confirmation number and everything. A wire transfer scheduled for Monday morning. $8 million from Tech Venture's operating account to a bank in Singapore, the same bank where Marcus had already moved $2 million through shell companies. An email to his personal lawyer about asset protection strategies and countries with favorable extradition policies. I downloaded everything, sent it to Agent Palmer. 20 minutes later, she called back. We are moving. Now. Saturday evening, federal agents executed search warrants at Tech Ventures offices and Marcus Thornton's house in Bellevue. They seized servers, froze bank accounts, confiscated laptops and phones. Marcus was arrested in his driveway, still in his tennis clothes from an afternoon at the country club, charged with wire fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, obstruction of justice. Bail set at $5 million. He sat in King County Jail over the weekend, the same jail where people arrested for shoplifting and drug possession sat, because even $5 million takes time to arrange on a Saturday night. I watched the news coverage from Amy's couch, Tyler beside me, Scott on the phone with the other former employees, everyone calling each other with updates. Marcus' face on the local news, not giving interviews this time but in a mugshot. The Tech Venture logo behind reporters talking about fraud and embezzlement and a fallen tech CEO. 5 years I had worked for him. 5 years I believed in his vision. 5 years I sacrificed everything, and in one weekend, it all came down. Because he picked the wrong person to betray. Because he forgot that the systems he used to steal were the same systems someone else had built. Someone who understood them better than he ever could. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt empty, exhausted, grateful, but also sad about what could have been if Marcus had been honest, if he had valued people over profit, if he had built something real instead of a fraud. 3 months passed before Marcus' trial concluded. The prosecution presented our evidence methodically, building a case that left no room for reasonable doubt. Server logs, audit trails, wire transfers, email chains, testimony from 7 former employees spanning 2 years of systematic fraud. The defense tried to paint us as vindictive ex-workers with an axe to grind, but the digital evidence did not lie. Marcus' own user account, his own IP address, his own digital signature on every fraudulent transaction. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on 12 counts of wire fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. The judge sentenced him to 8 years in federal prison and ordered full restitution of $4.7 million. Not enough to undo the damage, but something. Real consequences. Tech Venture Solutions collapsed after the scandal broke. Investors pulled funding. Clients canceled contracts. Employees found jobs elsewhere. The company assets were liquidated to pay restitution to defrauded investors and settlements to wrongfully terminated employees. The Seattle tech community buzzed with the story for weeks, then moved on to the next scandal, the next startup, the next promise of disruption and innovation. Dorothy received a settlement from the company's insurance policy. $200,000, more than the $20,000 she had been pressured to accept before. She testified at Marcus' trial with her head held high, vindicated after months of people thinking she was lying. She told me later that money could not give her back the year she lost fighting alone, but at least her grandchildren would see their grandmother's name cleared. Tyler found a new job at an ethical startup focused on financial transparency software. The irony was not lost on either of us. His new salary was 40% higher than what Tech Venture paid him, and his boss actually encouraged him to maintain work-life balance. He called me his mentor, said I taught him courage matters more than career security. I hoped he was right. Scott and the other employees who helped build the case received settlements too. Most found new positions in the tech industry. Their reputations, which Marcus had tried to destroy by firing them for false reasons, were restored. Several of them started a support group for whistleblowers in the tech industry, helping others navigate the difficult choice between staying silent and speaking truth. As for me, I became something of a minor celebrity in Seattle's tech scene. The engineer who took down a corrupt CEO. Job offers came from multiple companies. Good companies, ethical companies, places that valued integrity and treated employees like human beings instead of disposable resources. The offers were flattering, and some paid significantly more than TechVenture ever did. But I did something different instead. I used my settlement money, $350,000 from the lawsuit that Marcus Insurance Company paid to make the whole thing go away, to start my own consulting firm. Ethical software auditing for companies that wanted to ensure financial transparency and system integrity. I brought in 3 other former TechVenture employees as partners. We were small, just 4 people working from a shared office space in Fremont, but the work felt meaningful in a way that writing code for someone else's profit never had. We made less money than we could have at big tech companies, but we slept better at night. Our clients were nonprofits, startups trying to do things right, established companies that wanted independent verification of their systems. We built tools to detect fraud, to create audit trails, to ensure that what happened at TechVenture could not happen elsewhere. Each project felt like we were fixing a small piece of a broken system. Personally, I changed too. Before all this, I defined myself by my job, by my productivity, by how much I could accomplish and how hard I could work. I sacrificed relationships, health, happiness, all for a company that saw me as disposable. The moment I was no longer useful, they threw me away over $14. Now I understood that my worth was not tied to an employer's validation. I learned to set boundaries, to say no, to value my own time and well-being. I worked 40-hour weeks, not 60. I took weekends off. I visited my family in Spokane regularly. I started dating someone I met at a tech ethics conference, a software engineer at a nonprofit who shared my values. We moved slowly, building something real instead of rushing. I kept the original expense report framed in my office, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. The $14 coffee expense that Marcus used as an excuse to fire me. A reminder that small injustices often reveal larger truths. That standing up matters even when it is scary. That systems only work when good people maintain them and fight to protect them from corruption. Dorothy and I had coffee together regularly now. A real friendship forged through shared trauma and eventual triumph. Tyler stopped by the office weekly, still learning, still growing, becoming the kind of engineer who would someday mentor others the way I mentored him. Amy was proud of her friend's courage and occasionally sent new clients our way through her PR connections. We built a community of people who believed that doing the right thing was worth the cost. One afternoon, about 4 months after Marcus was sentenced, I got a phone call from a young woman named Hannah. She worked at a different tech company, a startup in South Lake Union, and her voice shook as she explained why she was calling. I noticed some things at my company. Financial irregularities. My boss told me to ignore them, said it was above my pay grade. But I looked at your story online. Read about what you did at TechVenture. I do not know what to do. I am scared I will lose my job if I say anything. I listened to her story, heard the fear in her voice, and remembered myself 4 months ago, sitting in my apartment after being fired, discovering the fraud, facing the lawsuit, feeling completely alone and terrified. I remembered the breaking point, the moment I decided that staying silent would cost more than speaking up. Tell me everything, I said to Hannah. Start from the beginning. As she talked, I took notes, asked questions, began to see the pattern she was describing. Another corrupt executive, another scheme to steal from investors, another young employee caught between doing what was right and protecting her job. When she finished, I said, "You are not alone, and you do not have to figure this out by yourself. Let me help you." This was the work that mattered now. Not just exposing one bad actor, but building systems and supporting people so that fraud became harder to hide and whistleblowers did not have to stand alone. Marcus' downfall was not just about one CEO going to prison. It was about showing other people that they could fight back, that the system could work if enough people demanded it. Looking back on everything, I realized the greatest danger was never standing up and failing. The greatest danger was staying silent and losing yourself in the process. letting injustice become normalized, accepting wrong as standard business practice because fighting back seemed too hard or too risky. $14 was never about coffee. It was about power, about control, about silencing people who saw too much. But Marcus underestimated what one person with truth and courage could do. He underestimated that I built the systems he used to steal, that I understood them better than he ever could. He underestimated that other people he had hurt were waiting for someone to stand up first. I did not dismantle his company alone. I was the catalyst that allowed others to find their voices, to share their evidence, to stop accepting abuse as the price of employment. Real change came when we decided our values mattered more than our comfort. When we chose integrity over fear, they picked the wrong engineer to betray. Not because I was vindictive or vengeful, but because I knew what I had built. I knew what was right. And in the end, that knowledge was enough. That determination was enough. That courage, as terrified as I felt, was enough. I built something better than software systems. I built a life with purpose. I built a community of people who believed in accountability and ethics and treating each other with dignity. I built a career that let me sleep at night, that made me proud, that helped others avoid the pain I went through. And that was worth everything. Worth the fear and the lawsuits and the threats. Worth the empty bank account and the sleepless nights and the terror of standing up when everyone else was sitting down. Because at the end, I could look at myself in the mirror and know I did the right thing. I fought back. I won. Marcus Thornton spent 8 years in federal prison thinking about his choices. I spent those same years building something that mattered, helping people, making the tech industry slightly more honest than I found it. Some people might call that revenge. I call it justice. And I call it proof that sometimes one person with evidence and determination can change everything. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between staying silent or speaking up, even when it put everything at risk? What would you do if you discovered fraud at your workplace? Would you be willing to sacrifice your job, your security, your peace of mind to do the right thing? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about integrity and courage and standing up for what is right, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about people who refuse to accept injustice, who fought back against corruption, who proved that ordinary people can make extraordinary differences, and share this with someone who needs to hear that they are not alone in their fight, that speaking truth to power is possible, that justice sometimes wins. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it inspires you to be brave in your own life, to stand up when it matters, to never let anyone make you feel small or disposable. You are worth more than any job, any paycheck, any company's bottom line. Remember that. Hold on to that. And when the moment comes to choose between right and easy, choose right. Every single time. Stay strong, stay honest, and never let them make you forget your worth.